And I think life's pretty good. This is a pretty nice community. It's pretty beautiful up here. You enjoy living up here, guys? I would hope so. It's pretty fantastic. You know, on the news, they would make you believe that the war is going to end in the next hour. If you want world peace, turn the TV off, go take a walk. You know, that's what you have to do, right? Because there's great things going on out there. The networks make a lot of money from fear, all of them, you know. I think fear should be a major in college because it makes a lot. Are you pre-law, pre-med? I'm pre-fear. I'm going to go to fear school after this. I'm going to make a lot of money. Because they say the world's gotten so violent. The world never got violent. There is no God. The world has been violent since the beginning. Cain killed Abel, right? Cain killed Abel. The third person on the planet killed the fourth person on the planet. We weren't even able to make it to 3 people. Before somebody was a murderer. At one time, a third of the people on the planet were murderers, right? A third of the people in the hood aren't murderers. A third of the people who own guns aren't murderers. A third of the people in jail aren't even murderers. San Quentin, Folsom Prison, and Alcatraz are safer than the book of Genesis. You thought Compton and Baghdad were tough? Try downtown Eden after the sun goes down, right? There was murder and violence at person 3. One couple had 2 boys who had the world to themselves, and one of them was claiming, this town ain't big enough for the 2 of us. Cain killed 25% of the world's population. That's more than Stalin, Hitler, Idi Amin, Pol Pot, King Herod, Genghis Khan, the English, Manifest Destiny, typhoid, cancer, AIDS, cooties, all combined. Cain killed a third of the people he knew. He knew 3 people. He killed one of them. If you knew Cain, you had a 66 2/3% chance of survival. There's no such thing as the good old days. There was no perfect time to be alive. There was like one good day. It was half a day. Adam and Eve were naked, alone, in an oasis. Lunchtime came. People got hungry. Apples were eaten. Boom, Detroit.
Boom, Detroit. I love it. I absolutely love it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show a comedian who has appeared on Comedy Central's Live at Gotham, The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, The Bob and Tom Show, Comics Unleashed, the Montreal Comedy Festival, and is a regular at the Improv and Comedy Store in Hollywood well before COVID-19. Yeah. He was also a cast member of MyTV's Tony Rock project, The White Guy, and check out his recent special on Dry Bar Comedy, which we were just watching. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, please welcome the very funny and talented Patrick Keane. What's up, Pat?
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you, man. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey man, that was a great set, Pat.
Oh yeah, that was up in Provo, Utah, and I was a little concerned about just language and content and stuff like that because it's kind of it's a Mormon community, but they loved it. I'm a pretty clean comic anyway, and it was a great time.
Well, that's the thing about, doing stand-up. I know guys, and I'm a clean comic, but I have worked with a lot of guys that are not, and it's all good, especially because I produce shows. But, dude, Pat, I've had some guys, man, on my show, and in their mind, they're being clean. They're so out away from the shore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They don't even know. They don't even know when they're being dirty, man.
That's great phrasing. So far away from the shore. Yeah. God, I know what you mean. And I've done a bunch of shows. Sometimes they'll book intentional dirty shows. They'll book a show. Hey, it's a dirty show. Yeah. So you got to come and be dirty. And I'll go on 3rd or 4th. Let's say there's 8 performers. And I just do a regular clean set. And the crowd still enjoys it. They're just like, there's a tolerance, in all things.
Dude, the crowd doesn't care, Pat. I've been, I would say 80% of the venues that I perform in are not clean, but I'm doing clean comedy there, And nobody cares as long as
Yeah.
it's funny. They
Yeah.
really don't care.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You know, my grandparents, one was in World War II and one was a nurse, and they went to church every Sunday, but they still loved, Red Fox, Don Rickles, whoever, Phyllis Dillard, Joan Rivers, Buddy Hackett, like the dirty or the clean. Like you said, as long as it was funny.
As long as it was funny. You mentioned
From
Red
both sides.
Fox. What's that?
Well, from both sides, right? Like a dirty
From both
audience is happy with clean stuff. A clean crowd is happy with dirty stuff. Like you said, funny is the.
Funny is funny, dude. You're not. Look, I'm 56. You're a little bit younger than me, but not a ton. So you remember you mentioned Don Rickles and Red Fox, and those are two interesting. I could name a bunch of other interesting figures, but Don Rickles is probably the only guy who was just a flat out mean guy. He was a mean dude. Yeah. Don Rickles was a mean dude, but he had the ability to kind of endear himself to people as he was trashing them.
Yes, that's right. Endearing. That's the word. That's the operative word there. Yeah.
I mean, that is a true skill to be able to do that. There's so many different styles and forms in comedy. And, so you just take your pick. What kind of comic do I want to be? And then you got to commit yourself to it and perfect it. And Don Rickles is a guy that has perfected a skill that not a lot of guys can do. I don't know, Sam, would you put Sam Kinison in that category?
Oh, yeah, that's right. God, it's tough when they die that young. But yeah, I mean, I think Kinison was big. He was loud. He could get you going. But as far as the roasting, it's more of a, I would say, more of a Don Rickles, Jeff Ross, I guess Anthony Jeselnik, those guys. But yeah, Rickles would be the great original.
Well, Pat, what's really weird is like Red Fox was a guy that was on the Chitlin circuit back in the day, right? So it's only black entertainers, and he was so funny that they asked him to do a network appearance or appear at this major comedy club. And he said, can you do those jokes you were doing on the Chitlin circuit or the one I saw you do at this particular show? And he's like, why would I do the same joke again?
Yeah.
I don't, that is amazing, because we have our stuff, we create our jokes, and of course we keep writing new stuff, but we don't abandon gold.
Right.
Right. If it works, I'm not ever going to trash it. But he came from an era where he just constantly made stuff up. He's always making up stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. He was beloved and so genuine and pure, he was great. I just read recently that he was Pat Morita's influence, which
I didn't know that. I remember Pat Morita was a regular down towards the end of Sanford and Son. I remember that. And Pat, think about how racist Red Fox was. I mean, the dude was so unapologetically racist, and it was in 1972, 1973, and he would say the N-word at the drop of a dime. He would call a Chinese guy names and a Hispanic guy, and everybody loved it.
Yeah.
You couldn't get away with it in 2021.
That's so true. You couldn't. It's amazing. You try, and Eddie Murphy, I think, even recently came out and apologized for some of the material he did, or at least he explained, hey, this is why I did it. That was within the confines of the time.
Yeah.
I think that's important, so we don't cancel out everything. I mean, what we did at any time, my behavior in college was a lot more different in the 90s than it is today.
Yeah.
And, you push the limits and you hopefully act within the constraints of society.
You would hope that you would, but we're just dealing with so many different things. But I'm going to dive into that later. I want to tell you a little bit about the pandemic situation. We as comics, we can't get out and do. We were talking about it a little bit before we came on live, but we can't do what we were doing. How are you handling the situation as far as performing outside, Zoom, that kind of thing?
That's a great question. I was just talking on a podcast this morning about how it's such a pivot. I know that word is probably overused, but it's just like, you're doing this thing for 20 years and then it just completely goes away. The club scene, the college appearances, the cruise ships, writing on a show, and you're just left like, it's so humbling to be like, oh, wow, the world doesn't need what I thought it needed, even though it does. But it is getting along without it, and like you're left to other devices, which is hard and frustrating. And the Zoom shows are a great outlet. I think most audiences get it, and they go, okay, this is a weird thing for the performer. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to chime in. I did an outdoor show at the Irvine Improv, which is kind of a drive-in situation. So your face and everything's on the big Jumbotron behind you, and cars are backed in like it's drive-in, and they can tune in on their radio to hear you.
Yeah.
And they're kind of encouraged to honk, which is actually more of a distraction, I find. The honking. It's like, I'd rather hear silence and at least imagine that you're laughing inside your cars. But But so that's a little weird. But it's an outlet, and comics need it. It's not like you can ask stand-up comics, just make YouTube videos, or just make TikTok videos, or Instagram videos, or Instagram TV, or Facebook. Because we need that live something, and even if it's a few people in an office laughing from their laptops, we need to hear it, man. We're needy freaks, I guess.
Well, I got a comedy buddy out there in LA, and he was telling me the same thing. People are honking their horns when they like your joke. And he said he didn't know if they liked it or if he was being heckled.
yeah, that's what it feels like. It feels like you're being heckled. Yeah.
So, it's just kind of crazy. The COVID-19 has changed everything. One thing I have realized, Pat, during this COVID-19 deal, I have realized and learned something, and that is this: Alexa and Michael B. Jordan have to get a job. You can't be sitting around my house all day with the shirt off and you over there just doing nothing. Go get a job. Pay some of these bills around here.
Oh, yeah, that's good, Michael B.
I told my daughter, I said, look, you go in that kitchen and you tell Alexa, daggone it, I want my clothes take it to the cleaners on Tuesday. You tell Michael B. Jordan to put his shirt on and cut the lawn, and I want him flipping burgers at McDonald's on Monday, doggone it.
Yeah, that's right. Jesus, I forgot about that. Yeah, it's a lot of weird. I'll tell you, those progressive commercials where the guy's trying to help people from becoming their parents.
Yeah,
that's a great campaign. I think that's the comedy of the year right there. That guy.
Hey, look, Pat, tell us a little bit, dude, about the Tony Rock Project, the white guy.
Well, that was it was called the Tony Rock Project. About I guess it's been more than 10 years since we did that.
Wow.
And it was. There were two other white people on. There was Whitney Cummings and John Heffron were on it.
Oh, wow.
But I was kind of a field performer where you'd go out and do hidden camera stuff and maybe talk to people on the street, interviews and hidden camera. And you'd go out there and just, I was hoping it would really take off and I could be the Jim Carrey from, In Living Color.
Yeah.
But whatever. It's just one of the many shows that had its time, and but it was fun. I love collaborative efforts like that. I love doing that in addition to the stand-up. It's a nice balance. Then people recognize you from yet one other thing. But it was good. It was I think it was right around the Orlando Jones show. It was right around the time maybe Key and Peele was about to take off. So yeah, it was great. It was great. And it was fun. And it was in LA, and Tony Rock's great, brother Chris Rock, of course. And we got it was very interesting. We had a couple social experiments we did, if you want to YouTube them. Just, again, the collaborative process is a thrill for me.
Aaron, let's see, Whitney Cummings. I mean, to say he was a part of Saturday Night Live, wasn't he?
Who's that? Whitney
Cummings.
Whitney. She may have been on the show. She sold a few shows. She did Two Broke Girls. She did. She had her own podcast, her own talk show for a while, and I don't know. She might have written on SNL and maybe been a featured performer. But yeah, I haven't seen her in over 10 years either. But she's doing really well. And then John Heffron is a great comic from Michigan, and I think they had Butch Bradley on there as well, and stuff like that. And then Tony Rock's whole crew is just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This, one thing I have to keep referring back to COVID-19. It's made us kind of focus on a lot of other things, like particularly in the home. Of course, now I've got 3 kids, 24, 22, and 19, right? Wow. So, and I used to tell them all the time, I said, now listen, you're not thugs, okay? Just understand that you're not thugs. You have a dad that's a black man that talks like Tom Hanks. So just stop it. It's not going to work out too well at the cookout, Pat.
Yeah.
But I mean, but what have you been doing to kind of keep yourself busy outside of the Zoom shows, the COVID-19? Not a lot going on for us comics, really.
Yeah. I've just been. I have been writing. I've been writing stand-up, for someday, hopefully, to get used, which is good. It makes you kind of be a little more introspective. And then I'm working on a pilot, trying to get a pilot going called "Stay at Home Uncle." It's just it's a joke in my act. It's called "Stay at Home Uncle," and I tell people I'm a stay-at-home uncle, and which there's no difference between an uncle that goes to work. But right now we're all stay at home, so it doesn't matter. But I've been writing that pilot, and then I've also been making little videos where it's called Fan Center, where I kind of dress up in the old 1970s Monday Night Football ABC Wide World of Sports coat, and I interview people. I go around. I try to cover stories, whether they're human interest or whether it's just stories about anything but the athletes. It's fans, it's kids, it's silly holidays that we have, and so you make these videos for TikTok and Instagram because you feed that muscle as well. And so it's Fan Center is basically Sports Center, but it's all about the fans. So the stories, how many buffalo wings were you able to eat this weekend? Are you better in the playoffs with eating buffalo wings? Like the new Lazy Boy, is that better to watch the Super Bowl in, or do you prefer your old couch? Stuff like that. And you just kind of keep making content. You keep creating. You keep daring to suck. You remove layers of not knowing, of not experience, so that when you step into a situation, you're ready to go. When Bernie Mac got his big break, he had been through so many terrible shows and so many terrible experiences that he went on. I don't know if it was the Apollo or it was a BET show, but he went on, and the comedian before him did awful. So the crowd was just,
terrible mood.
Yeah, and he went up, and I think it's Bill Bellamy who tells the story of him pacing backstage, and he's like, "Nah, man, I've come too far. I've come too far, seen too many of these." And he went on stage and just knocked it out of the park, and just the resilience and all the trial and error. And he went on and killed it, and that got him into the Kings of Comedy, and then it launched a great career.
That's an interesting story, Pat. I never knew that about Bernie Mac. I know that, because as you mentioned, him going through it sounds like he went through a lot of tough times, probably. And as a comedian, you cannot avoid this. You're going to bomb. You're going to have bad experiences. When you think about Bernie Mac, you find it very difficult to imagine him bombing. But you get to a point, dude, where, you're like, look, I got to figure this out. And then you just kind of stop caring.
Yeah.
And you just kind of do you, and you kind of get comfortable in that setting, and it starts to click for you. It certainly did for Bernie Mac. And I remember that show you're speaking of, and he told the audience, "I'm not afraid of you, whatever's." Yeah. And he just let it rip, man. And comedy is just a tough game, and you got to have that extra layer of skin to be in this game of, okay, well, I'll be back tomorrow if it doesn't go well. Yeah. I'm definitely coming back tomorrow. Yeah. And that resiliency puts you over the top, and eventually you start, doing pretty well. And I want to ask you about your dry bar comedies, but I've heard nothing but great things about the folks out there in Provo, Utah. What was that experience like for you?
It was great. It was they fly you up there. You do a weekend. You do 2 nights show. You can do 2 shows in one night or 1 show in 2 nights. And I think I did 2 shows in 1 night. But very responsive, smart audiences. I was a little concerned because I'm not married. I was just in the beginning of a relationship, but don't have children, and I have some alcohol references, maybe some recreational stuff, substance references, which obviously their religion doesn't involved in their lifestyles, but they were, open-minded enough. They got it, and we tweaked some things, and for the second show, it was a little bit different, but very clever, and the emphasis is on family. It's on sports, so I was like, okay, I'll lean toward that. There's plenty of that. I grew up playing sports in Orange County, California, and I played them with Mormon kids, and you play with all kinds of kids in those leagues, and but I remember there was always emphasis on family, and you couldn't drink caffeine. I remember some of the Mormon basketball players wouldn't drink Coke or something. They had to drink 7-Up, but it depends on how strict you are in that.
Yeah, listen. I'm gonna tell you right now, Pat. Even as a clean comic, dude, you have jokes that certain audiences. I'll say a church audience can't handle certain types of jokes, even though they're clean. I had Corey Rodriguez on the show a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you've ever met Corey or not.
I've never met, but I know of. Yeah.
And he did a dry bar special out there. He was telling me that he was he was telling a joke about, being in a house with his girlfriend. And one of the ladies in the audience said, he means his wife. So, I mean, you really have to be careful. And I'll tell you, Pat, I've gotten in trouble. I was doing a spoken word event, man, and I came out and I'm telling these jokes, man. They're all preacher jokes. It'd be a cacophony of lights going. I'm killing. And I had one joke that I usually tell in taverns and bars, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I really didn't. Surely they're mature enough to get to joke, and if they don't, they love me so much they'll forgive me, dude. Let me tell you something, Pat. I let it rip. And I went from here to there in a split second. Yeah,
you can lose them. Yeah, I get it. I've been there. I know what
Yeah.
I know that experience.
Oh, man. But it's kind of funny, though, man. You just got to kind of
what's going on? I didn't do anything. Like, come on,
Really, guys?
Yeah. Let me blow one by you just off of the last 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Everything was clean. But yeah, they will turn on you.
They will. Oh, dude, they'll turn. And it was really funny in those kind of audiences, too, where there are people in the audience that are with you, but they don't want to go against the grain.
That's it.
You know what I mean? It's like they're just not going to do it. I've even seen people laughing quietly. I'm like,
right.
just give up the laugh, man. But But you just have to learn those things. But I thought it was funny when Corey said that about dry bars. So when you go out there, there's a certain, level of jokes that you got to understand that you're going to tell. And it's fine. I heard those people are great out there. They come ready to have a good time, and they treat the comics really, really well.
Yeah, it's a really great situation. Yeah, and it's and it's been good. That's been 2 years now, I think, since I shot it, and it's been great.
Now, Pat, I know that you're a single guy, and you alluded to it a moment or two ago, and you've included being single in your act, which is pretty funny. And I'm wondering, how does it feel, Pat, to be as tired and worn out as a 50-something-year-old guy like myself? How does that feel, Pat?
Well, I'll tell you, I can't believe you just said that you have 3 kids, and I think they're early 20s and late teens.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you there's no way I couldn't do that. I mean, you drink coffee there. Maybe that helps. But
it helps. It did.
Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like we're all caught up. We're about the same age. I'm not a father. I'm not a husband. I have the same side effects. I'm tired. I'm out of shape. I don't have any money. I yell at other people's children. So I'm just like a father. I might as well have had the children, so.
You may as well have had the children, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it just a matter of time before my wife, and because we got a 19-year-old, she's almost ready to go. And then we're just going to go to the beach, me and my wife, and yell at other people's kids.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So, yeah, I mean, why not? But I think it's interesting, man. So let me ask you this. Back to comedy in its purest form. What motivates you, Pat, to get on stage, go into a room full of people that you don't know, never seen before in your life, some of which you probably wouldn't even dare have a conversation with on the street. However, you're going to be my bosom buddy for the next half hour. What motivates you to do that, Pat?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's out of love or hate or self-love or self-hate. Because sometimes I'm like, is this just revenge? Is this just, am I just exacting revenge for growing up shy and not really communicating how I felt to people?
Yeah.
Is that it? Or maybe that's my connection to humans is through comedy, since, I don't know, I assume, you're not going to be liked. I think we moved around. My family moved around a lot as kids. So I kind of had to rely on wit to make friends at different schools. I was obviously goofy looking kid. Who isn't, right? We're all goofy looking. And then a lot of the moving and then it just never went bad enough to stop. I mean, there have been bad shows. We've all had them, but it just was never bad enough, or I'm that much of a masochist that I just keep doing it. But I do enjoy like being the butt of a joke, self-deprecating to get the audience, on my side a little bit and just helping them forget about, I don't know, I try to, with the jokes, tickle their brain a little bit and they feel kind of clever and they're laughing. Oh, I figured that out. And it's almost like we solved a puzzle together, or a riddle or a crossword or something. Because unfortunately, I make them work a little bit too much for it. But, I'm a show off a little bit. Like, I like my jokes in print. I like to show them to people, but I'm like, yeah, but I got to get these in front of people too. So it's a combination of things.
It's interesting when you said solving a puzzle. So Bill Burr, he said he was over in Eastern Europe and he had a great tour. I mean, most places, he killed, but Eastern Europe was sort of like, the Midwest, like Wisconsin or something. But he said that in Austria, for example, he said he actually bombed in Austria because he said that, when he would tell the jokes, they were trying to solve the problem. They were like saying things like, why don't you just tell them you're sorry?
Yeah, that's so funny.
So
funny. Yeah, that's so true.
It's funny though that you said that, because you're kind of like all solving a problem together. In most cases, people love it and they laugh. So I guess kind of the core of it all is, maybe in a weird kind of way, is that you're kind of like solving issues. I know for me, growing up, black guys love to just demean one another growing up. I mean, we just love it. We call it scolding, or up here in DC, they call it joning or what have you. But when you learn how to get good at that, like my brother said, man, you're awesome at that. I got to do something.
Yeah.
You got to, and then you start becoming really adept at, just coming up with funny stuff. You were saying, as a kid, you moved around a lot. You kind of learned the ability to, appease people, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. And kind of, I wasn't a big guy. I didn't overwhelm people. In class growing up, people like, were you the class clown? And I kind of wasn't. I commented. I'd have like one-liners. I'd comment on a student or a teacher. I was never like a big storyteller at recess or lunch. Like, oh man, this and this, and gather around. And I was never that guy.
Yeah.
But it was just more of a, like, probably in Barney Miller or something like. I was Steve Landisberg, if anybody gets that reference, like the third or fourth person removed down the trough.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So, I can imagine you in DC as a kid, like those playgrounds in DC, whatever, in the 70s, that was like, you had to be pretty witty.
Dude, well, I'm actually from North Carolina, Pat.
Oh, you are? Okay.
As I was saying before, it's kind of like in the African American community, dude, demeaning one another verbally is a thing.
Oh,
I mean, it's a big thing. Like I said, that's why I said I used the DC reference, because they call it joning up here. I used to teach emotionally disturbed teens and learning disabled teens up here for about 6 years. And I had a new appreciation for the area. Like, oh my gosh, these kids are different. But at the same time, the mindset is still the same. In North Carolina, it's called something else, but it's the same deal. And speaking of DC, I want to ask you this. You're out in California. Have you, and you actually, you mentioned it before we came on live, that you did perform at DC Improv.
Yeah.
What are some of the better parts of the country that you've performed in as far as stand-up goes that you find like some of the better places?
Well, I think part of it is the club itself. You know, it's kind of the management and the club and the personnel behind that club, as well as the town, as well as kind of the part of town, right?
Okay.
So, DC is one of those. The DC Improv is a great club. It's one of the best.
Yeah.
And it's in a town, I think it's DuPont Circle or something like that, or roughly right around there. So it's in a pretty hip part of a obviously very hip town.
Yes.
And so it's just a lot of great things coming together, and people get the references. They're open-minded enough. They're not too arms folded. You know, San Francisco was great in the 90s and 2000s, and recently, San Francisco has been a little too high and mighty on itself.
Is that right? Okay.
With, language, control and kind of overly woke. But that's easy. That's so easy for a comic, especially a white male, heterosexual, to say. It's very easy to say too woke, So, I don't want to just use that as a scapegoat. But that's a great club. The Punchline up there, and I think it's called Cobb's and the Punchline. And then Acme is great in Minneapolis, the Funny Bone in Columbus, and then Madison, Wisconsin has a club called Comedy on State. And so those are some of the better clubs in open-minded liberal towns that are great. I've never done stand-up in Austin, but I'm sure it would be great. I'm going to do that next month. But really, I mean, Denver Comedy Works, these clubs, it really depends on how they're run, what kind of acts they're bringing in, and what kind of clientele they're reaching out to. Some of these clubs are lazy and they just kind of ticket the room and just want it filled no matter what. And so it turns into a barn event, like a big, it's like a bunch of animals,
Well, well, Pat, the problem is there are people out there that should not produce comedy shows because they have no idea what they're doing. Yeah. And they put the comic in really, bad spots and situations, where they're set up to fail. Yeah. And so I like that you said that because it does happen. I know that in DC, I found it's interesting you said what you said about San Francisco, but I've always kind of looked at DC as a tough town for a comic because you're talking about a political environment and you're talking about, people are it's kind of a highbrow, it can be anyway, situation. So it's hard to kind of get people to loosen up. So when I go outside, like if I go to San Diego, if I go down to Miami, and I've had other comics from DC that say, well, man, whenever I leave here, I go to New York where I always kill. So we've all found out and realized that, DC is not one of the easiest places per se, although the DC Improv is a great place to go and do some comedy. But DC is kind of a grizzled area where you have to be on your game. If you bring it and your writing is good, because that's the deal in DC. You can't, it's not like, and I hope I'm not demeaning towns, but it's not like you can go to Philadelphia, you go up to Philadelphia, man, and just show up and just have a set. They're gonna laugh. They're gonna have a good time. In DC, it's like you have to write a freaking good joke. You can't serve up anything to them or they'll give you the stone face. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that's it's a little bit how San Francisco is in some of these smarter areas. You can't, they can see right through it, and but at the same time, you don't want to be so pretentious that you can only play Silver Lake and Brooklyn. You got to spread it around, and you got to be a human being, and you can't just be a social media comic. I mean, you can have a career that way and just pack the room. Yeah, sure. And have a career and make good money, but you're not
That's not necessarily mean you're a great comic.
No, it doesn't mean that at all. If you really want to be a great comic, I'm sure you've heard of Brian Regan, right?
Yeah.
So Brian Regan, I saw him do an interview once, and he was talking about early in his career, there was a certain room he used to do on a regular basis, and there would be different demographic crowds that would come in from night to night. And there were some comics that would be like, I can't perform in front of that crowd. And Brian Regan's like, you don't want to be great then.
Yeah.
You don't really want to be a great comic.
Well said.
And Brian Regan would go into an urban room, dude, and do the same Brian Regan stuff and still kill.
Yeah. I mean, right from the horse's mouth there, one of the greatest of all time. You gotta, whether it's a Roadhouse or whether it's a completely different Latino, white, black, Asian, whatever audience it is, Middle Eastern, you got to go play it. You got to get in front of them.
Pat, you got to go play it.
Yeah, and trust that your stuff is written and well prepared enough that if it only lands with 10% of the people, then there's still whatever group it is, age group, racial, ethnicity, there is a percentage of people that will get the good writing, get the good jokes.
Yeah, you can't care. I did a set on. They had the blackface scandal down here in Virginia with Governor Ralph Northam. I guess it was last summer. So I'll do these jokes about that, and I'm at an African American Latino room, and dude, it just killed. The next night, I was at an all white Republican page room in Northwest DC, dude. And it just fell right off the freaking table. I mean, it was bad, but I saw a couple of guys on it. They thought it was really funny. Again, they want to go against the grain. They thought it was hilarious, but they weren't giving the laugh up because the room wasn't. And I thought that was interesting. What I'm saying is that you got to go do your stuff wherever.
Yeah.
Just do your stuff.
Yeah.
And then, make whatever adjustments, because a crowd like that can be had. You just got to be willing to figure out, what do I need to do to make the adjustments to tell that same joke that will get this crowd.
That's right.
Now,
yeah. How do I lead it in a little? How do I massage it in there a little bit better? Going and performing in Europe. Not that I've done that, but I can imagine, wow, these references aren't going to be understood. So you just have to massage the joke a little bit like that. But funny is funny,
I'll be honest with you, full disclosure, this particular night with those pages, I went there that night, dude. I was the only black guy there, and the guy running the room, I was like, and it was an open mic. It was an awesome open mic. Those really packed. And I told the guy that was running the room, I said, hey, look, I'm going to be over here. Just let me know when you're ready. I know you're busy. I'm going to be over here. About 20 minutes goes by. I look up, and everybody's around the list. And I'm like, what? Now I'm mad.
Yeah.
I go over there, grab the list, I put my name on the list, and the other comedians were like, oh, don't worry about it. He's going to put you first. He's just getting the names together. I said, if I'm not in the top, I'm out of here if I'm not in the top 10. And sure enough, I was like 9, right? Which was still, a travesty. I should have gone home because I'm still fuming. So when I get up to perform, they have me out of this. I like to move around. So I'm on this square. So I'm standing on a square and I'm mad, dude. And I throw the first joke out and it just falls right off the table. I go, oh, man, that always gets laughs. Whoa. I throw the second one. I throw the second one out, Pat. Nothing. I'm like, oh boy, I'm in trouble. And you see this thing here at the bottom of the mic. Sometimes it'll fall out. And now I'm bombing and the thing falls out. And I'm like, oh, hey, I reach to pick it up and I look over at the guy that I'm mad at. And I go, hey, what do I do with this thing? He said, just plug it back in.
Jesus. No love. Oh.
Hey, Pat. So I put the thing back in, dude, and I continue on with my set. And I said, hey, thanks a lot. And I couldn't remember his name. I'm trying to remember his name. And some girl in the audience said, his name is Kevin.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. So it was bad. Hey, Pat, it was so bad. But, hey, Pat, what I learned from that was it's like, if you're angry, just go home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just go home.
Yeah. That's a great call. Because you're already, something's already in control. You're not in control of yourself anymore.
No.
At that point. And it's like, this isn't, I was at an open mic in Phoenix last week, and I was watching enough comics, and I was like deep down the list, and I was like, I'm not enjoying this right now. And I'm not enjoying the whole vibe. I'm like, I've been doing this long enough to know it's not going to go well. I'm not going to get anything out of it. What
was it about the room that made you feel like that, Pat?
Yeah. What's that?
What was it that made you feel that way?
Well, the comics, I don't know that I should be subjecting myself to some of those rooms. They can be counterproductive. If you've been doing this long enough, it's like, what am I doing here? I mean, I'm not even in the close age range of anybody in here.
Wow. Yeah.
Talking about different topics. They're not tight. They haven't written. It's just a bunch of buddies making jokes with each other.
Yeah.
Not really laughing or supporting good jokes. Nothing's going to come of this except I'll be in a worse mood. So I'm not, and I haven't done that a lot in my 20 years, but enough. And that's the beauty of it. You recognize you with life, you know going in how you're going to feel about something, and you know to not commit to something, or you know what to say no to. And man, that's powerful.
I love it. And that's when you get to that point, Pat, where you're like, you know what, I'm out. I'm not even feeling this. I'm not feeling it. Yeah. And just roll. I mean, it happens. There are times like that where it could definitely go down. And I've powered through some episodes like that before. This particular instance, dude, I was hot. Oh yeah. And it didn't normally happen. I don't normally get like that. I really don't. But anyway, I like what you said. There are just times when you just got to roll out. And as we speak on that bad experiences on stage, how do you deal with hecklers, Pat?
That's a good question. It's funny because I'm very writer heavy. So I never really engage the crowd.
Okay.
So rarely do I have one. And then even when I have one, I just kind of steamroll them because I've got material to the point that the audience is almost like, stop heckling. We're listening. We're listening to.
Oh yeah.
Like, what are you doing? You're slowing him down. He's doing his thing.
Yeah.
When it gets really bad, you just go, you all right, man? Like, what's going on here? You all right? And that solves 99.9% of it. If somebody's so drunk, then you're just like, I'm sorry, man. Can we get this guy out of here? Like, you're ruining it for so many people.
Yes.
But if you're someone getting into comedy, like I substitute taught for a while and as I trained for that, all the other people in training would be like, well, with an unruly student, what do you do? Yeah. And it's like, well, don't worry about that. Don't gear it to that. Like, it's few and far between. And it's the same in heckling, or it's the same in driving Uber. I did that for a while, years ago. And it's a small part of it all.
Pat, what I found is, I would say, from my experience, 90% of quote unquote would-be hecklers are people that have been drinking too much. They're excited and they think they're helping you. Yeah. They're just over the top with excitement. The method that I've used to kind of shut them down is appease them. Like, you know what? You're right, but there's more. There's more. You're gonna love it at the end. And they kind of feel like they got their appeasement. And they sit down. A lot of times they'll sit down because they think that they may end up being the butt of the joke, or they become interested to hear what the punchline is going to be. But then you get that dedicated guy that's coming. He's just coming for it. Matter of fact, Pat, I was in Miami last February before the pandemic. This was the first. I don't know if I would qualify this as a heckling per se, but I'm up there and there's this girl on the PGA Tour long ball hitting tour, PGA professional, and she's drunk as a skunk, and she's going after every comedian. Right, this is dedicated heckling right here. Right, I'm going. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, golf and comedy. Oh boy.
I'm like, and all the comics started looking at each other like, that look like this is going to be bad, and so I'm like, oh gosh, I hope she's gone. By the time I get up there, sure enough, they escorted her out. As soon as I get up there and grab the mic, she marches back in. But there's another girl at the bar who wasn't having it. So now these two are like nose to nose. Now they're but dude, can you imagine how weird this is? You got two blondes who don't fit the description of barroom brawlers in any way, shape, form, or fashion, and they're about to get down. I'm on the stage trying to do the set, right? And somebody said, Maurice, you should have started doing play-by-play because that would have been a way to get out of it. I did not know how to handle that one. And I killed just about every night on an 8-day spree in Miami. And that night I bombed because I didn't know how to dig out of that.
So those two were going at each other.
Oh, yeah. See, they were, because the girl, she didn't like it. She was like, she got tired of the interrupting. She wanted to watch the show.
Yeah. See, it's hard because you come prepared as a comic and you want to do this act or this thing. And then this, I don't know if you could call it a gift. These two are fighting and you're like, oh, I should just kind of stay out of the way. And like whoever said that to you, just commentate. But we don't know as comics, oh, this is a whole, there's a pivot here. I can kind of do a new muscle. You've come there to give your act.
Yeah. Yeah. Gigi, you're 100% correct, Gigi. Everyone in the audience wants the hecklers to just shut up. And that is true. So you got to know how the whole audience, like you said, Pat, they had your back. You're able to get them on your side when you're dealing with the heckler. Great point, Gigi. Gigi, I thought you weren't a stand-up comic. Yeah, but no, that's very true.
Yeah,
that's
that is a good point. Yeah, I've never seen a crowd back a heckler. And so good point there. Comics sometimes bite too much. Like you were saying, you just kind of give them a little, you feed them a little to appease them. Sometimes that's enough because sometimes comics overdo it. If it's just a little like soft, soft thing that a heckler does, you don't need to jump on it. No. The audience is on your side. Just like, okay, nod your head and like move it along.
Oh no, they're generally on your side. Yeah. I'm not a mean guy. I had one guy charge the stage and stop short. He was mad about something. I don't know. I guess because I sounded too much like Tom Hanks. I don't know. The guy, he charged the stage, dude, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I'm having a good set. And I said, "Everybody, it's okay." I promised him after the show we're gonna chase Pokemon. He's a little excited. He's ready to go now. It's okay.
Yeah.
And everybody started laughing. He was humiliated. And he wouldn't sit down, and I didn't have to, be mean about it. But
no, you handled it well. I think from our conversation, I bet you're very diplomatic with it.
I try to be. I really do. Now, I mentioned earlier, Pat, when we were talking about bombing on stage, it's part of the craft as a comic. It happens. What is your worst bombing experience, Pat?
God, that's a good question. I think it was a Christmas party about 15 or 16 years ago. I would have been like 3 or 4 years in, and a Christmas party at the Hyatt next to the Comedy Store, and it was hospital administrators, a holiday party.
Okay.
And it was these corporate gigs, and it was supposed to be 10 minutes. But the problem is when they don't get it, when they don't understand the situation, and they're still not laughing when you're making fun of yourself at how much of a failure the show is.
Yes.
And you say things like, "Okay, this will be my last night of performing ever." This is my. I didn't know taking the stage. I didn't know this would be my last show ever, but it looks like it will be.
Yeah.
When they don't even understand that, then you're like, "Oh wow, this is really bad." This is really bad. And it's because, it's not well lit. The sound isn't good. The audience wasn't prepped. The way the room is set up, the comics had to perform right next to a buffet table. And
that's terrible.
Walking up, getting their food, and you're standing right next to them. And then the mic was going in and out. So you just look like a crazy person yelling at the whole party. That's not, it needs to be, it's a show.
It's a show. And you know what? That's the worst thing, too, about these coordinators for a comedy show. It's like, don't have people while the comic is on stage. You don't do that.
No.
And you don't have them in line at the buffet table either. I mean, that's not how you do a comedy show. But a lot of people have no idea what they're doing, and they offer you up money. But then you learn, you got to ask a lot of questions before you take the gig. But I've heard a lot of crazy deals about corporate events. They can be dicey, I take it.
Yeah, they can be very uptight and very, until recently, they were very male and they were very, it's more balanced now. But yeah, I mean, they're around coworkers and their bosses and they want to be the smartest person in the room.
There you go. There it is. There it is. Let me ask you this. When it does happen, Pat, are you the type of guy that's able to brush off the bomb experience? Okay, it's one of the things. I'll be back tomorrow. Or does it take you a couple of days to get over and get it out of your system?
No, usually that night I can get it out. As long as I'm out of sight of all those people. Like I remember tanking it one night in San Diego so bad, and I just on the drive home, I was just so happy to be in the car. And I'm like, oh, every second is another second away from that show.
Right. Hey, Pat, you just kind of want to get it off you. I just want to just get this thing off.
Yeah. It was a dream. It was a dream. Sometimes cruise ship gigs. Yeah, they can be rough because you're still on the ship, isolated with all them.
Yeah.
So that can take a day. But
I love the analogy of I want to get as far away from this video as I possibly can and as quickly as I can because I got to get this thing off me. Yeah, I know what that's like, dude. I just like it that. That's so funny. Because at that spoken word event, dude, when I dropped that joke, dude, oh man, they were so mad. Oh, yeah. Actually turned that experience into a great punchline in urban rooms in particular. Yeah, you take bad experience. Have you ever taken bad experiences and made them part of your routine? Yeah, that's fun to do, and you exaggerate the story or make it work for comedic effect, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'm sure I have. I'm blanking right now, but cruise ship gigs. It's funny afterwards if you don't do well, and then for some reason you're talking to someone after the show or the next day, whether it's a club or cruise ship, and they're like, "Oh, you're actually a funny, smart, interesting person," and it's like, "Yeah, I was then too." You just weren't listening. You were drunk. It was Friday night. You were with friends. It was an obstacle course to comedy. When we do stand up, we have all these variables. When we're doing a sketch in front of on TV or in front of an audience, it's let's say like the show Seinfeld is being watched. Any TV show, The Office. When you're watching that, you're either alone or you're with two other people, with your family, whatever. When you're doing live comedy, you've got all these different types of people, ages, levels of drunkenness, different types of work, different backgrounds. And so you're juggling, and it's difficult. Like when people watch The Office or Seinfeld, they're not drunk. They're not 3 beers in or 2 cocktails in. So they're just watching. You're watching, and that's the audience I like. I like that kind of TV audience. Yeah, and you're great in front of audiences like that are smart. They're there to laugh. They're there to have a good time. Because your humor is really good. It's keen. Pardon the pun, keen, and it's just sharp, and it makes a lot of sense. So now, if you've had one too many Budweisers, you're gonna miss the whole thing. Yeah. You're gonna be like, what did he say? Yeah. One lady in St. Louis years ago. It was a midnight show. Yeah. And she came up to me afterwards, and she's like, "You're not funny at all." And instead of like getting resentful, she was clearly like not taking care of herself, Yeah. She was not an attractive person, but I was like, do you want to have dinner sometime? I'd love to get you, let's go to the beach sometime. Yeah. And, I'd love to get to know you. And she's just like, oh, screw you and this stuff. And I was just like playing with it. And her friends were laughing at me making fun of her because who comes up and says that? Who finds you after the show to come up and say you aren't funny? I'm like, you should talk to other people in the audience because they had a great time. You might want to talk to a few of those folks and find out what you missed. Yeah, what's wrong in your own life that you needed to single me out? But whatever. It happens. It definitely happens. How do you deal with situations? I don't know. I mean, you seem like a very calm guy, but I mean, everybody has the nerves, the butterflies, and so forth. Do you have a ritual or a process you go through to stay calm before you go up there, Pat?
I think we alluded to before how eventually you just get tired. Like I just get tired of being nervous before every show. It's like, I can't keep doing this. If I'm going to get this nervous before every show, there's got to be an equilibrium somewhere that balances it out. So I'm trying to get into meditation. I've heard great things and it seems to work for a lot of comics and people in general. But also, I used to isolate myself in the green room, but now I find it's better to be talking kind of all the way up to stage, like, because this is working, the mouth is working. You sit idle all day, and then you have to go up and do 45 minutes.
Yeah,
but you're not warm until minute 30, and you're like, oh man, I'm just getting my groove. I should have been talking right up until stage here. So,
the preparation part really kills half the nervousness. Like if you know your stuff, like when I get to the venue, I don't even want to look at my set. I don't want to see it. If I don't know it by the time I get there, I may as well go home. So I never look at that, and I just chit-chat throughout the night. But I got a gig. I'd never done 45 minutes before, and I was like, oh, man, okay. And so what I did was I had my wife sit up in the front and have all my joke order on these flashcards in the front. So she's sitting there, and I'm going to be looking down at her just in case I get lost. And I got up there. I never had to look at the cards. I mean, I knew my stuff.
Yeah.
And that kills, I think a lot of comics, and I'm just making a general statement. I don't know how true it is, but I think a lot of comics, don't work at preparation. Like, know your routine inside and out. Where there's to the point where it's like, there's no way I'm not going to be able to get them all out. Yeah. But I found that to be I was like, oh my gosh, I never had to look at her.
Yeah. That's really impressive because you were prepared. That's true in so many things. Public speaking, comedy, sports, these Belichick teams that are just so, they're unfazed, Bill Belichick football teams. And and you can tell who's not prepared in showcase situations, especially if you're showcasing for a late night spot or a Comedy Central spot. And you're like, oh, that guy he thought he could just wing it. And it is glaring. It is glaring when you have 5 people prepared and one that's not. You are going to get exposed.
You're going to get exposed. Christopher Sean Shaw, he's got a movie coming out, by the way. He's a director called Church People, which should be really funny in March. What do you wish you had known before going into stand-up comedy?
God, that's good. Just whether or not, I guess it would be introspective. How far do I want to take stand-up? Is this a means to an end?
Yeah.
Or do I want to be the George Carlin? Do I want to be Brian Regan, who just does stand-up, Or do I want to be a radio DJ? Do I want a podcast? Do I want to be a TV personality? Like, kind of narrow that thing as you go. Because I was kind of just out in no man's land for a long time. And, I just wish I knew. You don't need to know that before you take the stage, but and just know that there's no wrong way to go about it. There's no, it's funny to me when younger comics are like, I only like Chappelle or I only like Doug Stanhope. Well, I love both those guys. Stanhope and Mitch Hedberg were best friends. Okay, 2 completely different styles. Bob Newhart and Richard Pryor were great friends. 2 completely different styles. So don't think you need to fit one style.
Well, that comes from a lack of understanding your craft, and you got a long way to go when you think on that level. I remember hearing a story about, you mentioned George Carlin. I remember hearing, which I thought was quite amazing because I've never heard of a comic approaching his business the way George Carlin did. And George Carlin to me is like up there with, it's like, which one's the best all time, Richard Pryor or George Carlin? You can interchange the 1 and 2 spot all day long. Yeah. George Carlin never did open mics. He never practiced his material. What he would sit down and write an hour-long set to his very own liking and then go do it. And I went, oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's the discipline to stick with that on stage. You're like, no, I know this will come out. It'll come out okay. Like,
I mean, and the thing about Carlin is he grew up in a show business family. So I guess there's something to be said about his, comfort level in being on stage and performing and not feeling like I got to go. Because he probably had all that stuff figured out. Probably. Yeah. I don't know. But I just thought it was amazing that he could just sit down, put that stuff together and kill. George Carlin was a genius of a comic.
Yeah.
He was genius.
Yeah, it's amazing what resonates still today and what probably always will.
Pat, this has been a great conversation, dude. We have destroyed and annihilated 60 minutes here. This has been a lot of fun, a great conversation. Before we tip out of here, what are some of the projects that you have coming up on the horizon?
If people want to go to YouTube and just go Patrick Keane Fan Center, one word, Fan Center, they can see some clips I'm doing with my ridiculous ABC Wide World of Sports knockoff sport coat that's mustard colored.
Okay.
And I have a podcast called Keen on Things, which is on Spotify and Anchor and iTunes and all that. It's just my name on things, Keen on Things. And then just, Keen of Comedy, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that stuff.
I love the Keen on Comedy stuff. That's great. I love that's a great play on words. Pat, listen, dude, thanks so much for being on the show, man. Hopefully this pandemic will allow. Before you get out of here, do you have a prediction when this thing may end? And do you think we'll go back to normal?
It's going to be a long time before normal. I want to be hopeful, but I also want to pace our level of hope. And I think we're probably, before it's normal, I think we're looking at 18 months. And a slow climb out until then. But from here, it's a climb, and it's not a descend. So that's good. I think it's just going to be slow. And cruise ships and all that, and clubs and restaurants. I think LA and New York are probably the last to be able to lift things, But I think slowly, I think 18 months to be realistic and safe.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's around about the time frame I'm thinking. I'm thinking that, with this shot, which, there's still a lot to be said about this shot. I'm going to wait until, enough faces remain normal after, they're taking it. Before I go out there and do it. And, we'll see, man. I memean, if things do work according to so-called scheduled or plan, I think by next summer, we should be back. Because one thing I'm certain of, we're going to go back to normal. I'm certain of that. Okay, I read the Bible, Revelation 1 through 22. There is no mention of COVID-19.
All right, there you go.
So we'll be back out there eventually. Pat, thanks again for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with the very funny and talented Patrick Keane. You can see him on a Dry Bar comedy special, which was released recently. And he just told you some other ways that you can contact him. Pat, thank you so much for being on the show, my friend. May the peace of Christ be with you and your family, brother. God bless.
Cheers, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.